Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview. That's right. You see three faces. It's been a while since you've seen three of us on this show. I feel like it's been about a month and a half. Dave's
2 weeks.
It's been more than 2 weeks. It's been
2 weeks ago, all three of us.
No, it has not.
Okay, so yeah, 2 weeks ago, all three of us were here, but that was like once this summer that we were all here. But here we are. We're all here. They decided to finally work all together. This is good. The Steelers are back at training camp, and we're back together. Bryan has found his way out of the woods. I hope that, I was watching, what movie is really underrated, in my opinion, it's Will Ferrell, and I think Mark Wahlberg is never given credit for his comedy, is The Other Guys.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that one, Bryan?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, when I was thinking about You in the Woods, I thought about when Will Ferrell's character gets taken to the ER with poison ivy.
I'm going to tell you, I've got
poison ivy in his anus.
Whoa. It's never happened.
We knew what you were talking about. Did you really have to say it?
Yes, it's funny. It's so funny.
Oh, dear.
So how are the woods, Bryan?
It was fantastic. Best week I had. Nothing like that happened. In fact, the Scouts were on their best behavior. One boy threw an orange at the other, and that was the biggest. Problem we've had all week. I mean, it was great. It was fantastic. It was internet was not good, but it's the woods, But as far as everything else goes, it was the best week I've ever had. Very, very rewarding for me. I had a lot of fun. It's funny. Thursday night, I just started doing work at 2:30. It was 2:30 in the morning. And I heard all this rustling behind my tent, and I knew there was an animal out there. So I made sure that there was no food in my tent, and I preached to all the boys, don't have food in your tent. But I figured I'll go back to sleep. Then I heard more rustling and my tent moving a little bit. I'm like, oh, guys, light on, start doing work. So I started working on my BTSC stuff and writing articles, and just on my phone, actually, because I was not going to be eaten by Bigfoot it's not winter, so no Yeti. But I was just worried about those things.
Are we talking about your girlfriend Yeti, or are we talking about... She was rustling in the
ex-girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend.
Right. Come on. Ex-girlfriend. I don't want his wife to get upset.
She was coming back for more. I mean,
guys, no food out. Yeti's going.
I won't tell you. We had one camper decide to eat half of an ice cream sandwich in the afternoon, and he didn't want to litter and leave a trace, so he put it in his backpack. And I don't know whether he was really saving it for later or not. Put it as a backpack, and then a critter got into his tent, which could have been a raccoon. Luckily, it wasn't a raccoon or a bear, because we've seen them before. He had a mouse eat through his backpack. And what makes it worse, this one scout was helping me out, tell everybody, hey, make sure all the food's in the trailer, because we can't get somebody in there. But this one idiot scout did that. And the only reason I could call him an idiot, it's my own son.
It was your son. I knew that was coming.
Well, anyways, welcome back from your little vacation there. Dave Schofield, what's going on?
I don't know if you guys listened to Stat Geek this morning, but I kind of laid it out there. I'm struggling a little bit. I am now sharing my house with a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
Because today was my daughter turned 13.
Oh, so happy birthday.
Yeah. So we'll see how life goes now. So both you guys have daughters, but neither of them has hit 13 yet. So I guess I'll get to laugh at you all when that happens.
My son will be 13 in November.
Yes, I know your son because they're the same.
My daughter's no, I have a few more years yet.
My daughter just turned 12 in May, but she's a redhead, so that kind of makes her 15.
Trust me, I know my wife is a redhead, so I feel you there. So
my ex-wife's a redhead, so
we can.
Is Yeti a redhead?
My gosh, that was 30 years ago, and I didn't date her.
Pittsburgh Steelers or have fans in the stands at training camp wearing pads, and we're talking about Yeti.
All right, so Rhino Tool, I'll put this on there to kind of shift gears a little bit.
Thank you.
He says some really good articles on the BTSC website lately. Thank you, Ryan, because BehindTheSteelCurtain.com should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. As you know, we are a part of SB Nation and Vox Media, and our podcast platform is a part of that by proxy. So make sure that if you don't check out the website, we've had some really good stuff on there recently. The live tracker for training camp. I was able to find some fan video and did an inside look into practice on Wednesday, which is some really cool, eye-opening videos. And it just ticks me off sometimes. I read the comments. I don't read the comments often. These guys can attest. I normally just publish my work and move on with my life. But I checked the recap article and someone wrote, geez, you're so observant. No, we all know there's been no fans since 2019 at training camp. Yeah, but I feel like this is important. I really do feel like this is significant. So, guys, before we talk about players, training camp practice, news and notes, to me, how big of a deal is it that there's actually fans there? I think this is a big deal for the fans as much as it is the players. Brian, what do you think?
It really helps these guys out. They're thrilled that they're not in Latrobe, but it fuels them. It really fuels them having fans in the stand. There's an energy that comes with it. Now, as what you saw from the Heinz Field scoreboard today, maybe the organization isn't thrilled that fans are in the stands now because of sharing stuff on social media. But
gosh, that rubbed me the wrong way so bad. By the way, I was my gosh, I hate the Steelers organization for that. Anyways, they're so tight-lipped. I get it, I understand it, but how are you going to control? The Steelers fans taking video and then putting it on social media. I just don't. Do you think the Dallas Cowboys or the Ravens are pining through Steeler fans' Twitter and be like, "Oh, did you see this? Get out of here! Come on." Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Wait. Steelers superfan dad posted this video of Najee Harris running the football. Well, oh my gosh, he's running the football. Wow, that's a stretch.
You better prepare for that one.
Then someone said, "Wait a second, that's a really long Twitter handle. You sure you got that?"
It's like, wow, we should put him in our catalog.
Dave, go ahead. Fans at the and by the way, there hasn't looked like there's been a lot of fans there.
No, I mean,
practices have been very light, but they are during the week in the middle of the day.
They've had over 6,000 fans both days.
6,000 fans. I did not see 6,000 fans from the video.
That's been the report.
Okay,
but they're only open. They only have seats. They are on the 100 level on the visitor side.
Oh, so they're only one side. Okay,
that's all they have.
I didn't know if this was like Pittsburgh Pirates attendance, where it's like, well, we gave away tickets and they're all here. No, they're not.
Or at least the last I checked when I looked to see if they had tickets available. Not that I was going, I was just curious, and that's where all the seats were. But Coach Tomlin was asked yesterday in his post-practice press conference what it was like to see fans there for the first time, and this is his quote. I will read it. He says, "It's just great. They energize us. It's just been a tough year or so for all of us. So their presence is a signal that maybe we're moving on and out of it. And that's exciting." That's right from Coach Tomlin.
Amen. I think it's good. And then I forgot that this practice coming up tomorrow, Friday, is the Friday Night Lights practice. It'll be a nighttime practice. I'm sure there'll be more people in attendance, or as many as can possibly be there.
5:30 p.m. as much as that's nighttime.
Are you serious? That's when it's starting.
5:30.
Well, then that's Coach T. That's not Friday Night Lights. That's what Friday afternoon blue plate special. Senior citizen discount.
The early bird. Hey, if you want real Friday Night Lights, you want to win, you put Booby in.
There you go. Let me spin, Coach. Let me spin.
5 to 7 is when it's scheduled.
5 to 7.
Yeah, that's not under the lights.
Shoot, that's happy hour for most places. Anyways, let's see. Dave, you thought of the topic for tonight. And yes, you did. It was about the Steelers roster. I want to give you a chance to explain yourself as to kind of what the thought process was when you were thinking about this headline. Go ahead.
Well, so many people were asking about, and a lot of this is from outside, Steelers Nation, that, or the Steelers any better than what they were last year? Has their roster improved and everything? And Well, first of all, what do you want to do? Go back and compare them to the 1979 Steelers? I mean, where they were number one in offense and number two in defense. I mean, every year is different for every team, but you can go through and look to see where the Steelers may have improved and where they might not have improved. Because if you look at it position by position, it's one thing, but the other part is it's all got to fit together as well. So it's kind of that, and it's also kind of this narrative too of what do people actually think of this Steelers team? Because we all hear the negative comments from the national media about, the collapse at the end of the year and everything else. The way the Pittsburgh Steelers have acted all offseason is that they were a team that was very, very close and couldn't finish it off last year, that they don't have a long way to go to be that team that's right there on in competition for the championship. So let's see how they really compare and how it could really pan out.
So that's
okay with that?
Yes, you did. Absolutely. That's what we're going to do. We are going to compare the 2021 projected roster. I mean, we're going to be talking about players that we know are going to make the team, players that we know are going to be playing. I think right now, no one's going to throw Isaiah Loudermilk into this mix as to somehow being better than 2020. We don't even know. We assume he's going to make the team, but if he does, we doubt he's going to play. So let's start on offense. We have 5 positions on offense, 5 positions on defense. I kind of lumped some together for the purpose of just time. So let's start on offense, and we're going to go position by position, and we're going to say, is the Steelers roster better in 2021, or was the 2020 roster better at that position? And then when we're all said and done, we'll think about, what about the overall roster? So, okay, let's get this started with running back. So last year, obviously, you had James Conner. You still had Jalen Samuels. Anthony McFarland was a rookie. That was pretty much it. And then, you can throw Trey Edmonds in there if you want. Derek Watt, that doesn't count to me. But now you have Najee Harris. James Conner's gone. And you maybe throw in Ballage if you want. But guys, running back, is 2021 better or is 2020 better? There's some indecision there. Brian, what do you think? We'll go with you first.
Well, this is actually really tough because you have a guy that has not played a down of football as of yet in the National Football League in Najee Harris. But the promise of a new day with Najee Harris, to me, just makes it a better roster because you saw his accomplishments at the highest level in the NCAA. National champion with Alabama. He was a Heisman finalist. This guy was something that was completely special to make him the first running back taken in the draft and the Steelers' number 1 pick in this draft. So what I'm saying about Najee Harris is there's so much promise there. They're going to build a team with him in mind. And I know we're going to talk about the offensive line and how there's some naysayers that are going to say, well, he can't do it without an offensive line. We've seen this team perform in the first 5 games last year at the running back position. He is more dynamic than what you had in James Conner, who was a very good back, in my opinion. But I really think Najee is an upgrade.
I did forget Benny Snell when I was going through, but I'm sorry, maybe he's forgettable, but I did forget Benny Snell, so I want to throw him in there. Thank you, Kathy, for bringing that up. Dave, what about you? 2021 or 2020 in terms of running backs?
Well, bottom line is I look at the number 2 running back on down as the same. So it really that's who you have right now, as long as you choose to keep them. So it all comes down to RB1. And as much as I know some people didn't like James Conner, they said he was hurt. You know what? I've gone on and on about it, so I shouldn't have to say too much. All running backs miss time in the NFL. Conner didn't miss any more than a lot of people. So it's just how it goes. So it's not that 2, 3, 4 don't matter. They do matter, but they're basically the same as what they had last year, if you look at it that way. So coming down to number 1, you have to look at what Bryan saying in the pedigree and everything. And there's no way you spend a first-round draft pick on a running back unless you feel it is an upgrade. So it is. So you have to say that, as long as health isn't the problem, like it is a lot of times with running back rooms, that the advantage goes to 2021 here.
I am going to agree with both of you that 2021, even an unproven Najee Harris, in my opinion, is going to give a spark to the running game, and that's exactly what they need. I think about James Conner. I appreciate everything that he did for the city of Pittsburgh, the attention he brought to cancer research and things like that. He was an upstanding individual. But maybe it was just the injuries that caught up with him, but it just seemed like, especially at the end of his tenure in Pittsburgh, there was nothing special about him. And that sounds horrible. And I kind of feel bad saying that. But at the same time, I feel like it's true. There was nothing that's.
And we're back. Good, because I wanted to say something.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All I was going to say was, I think James Conner was asked to be a bell cow when that's not who he is.
That's a good point.
I just don't. I think he's a fantastic running back. He doesn't need to be an RB2. He just needs to be in an RBC. More of a running back by committee. Yeah. I think he would thrive more in that setting, and that's not what the Steelers were asking him to do.
Right. I think Najee Harris is special. And whether everyone wants to talk about whether he's going to get a second contract, this, that, the other, who cares? Right now, who cares? Why are we talking about this? 2021, I'll take 2021. Let's go to, now I wrote down, there was two positions, one on offense and one on defense, that I wrote same, because there really is no difference. One was on offense, was wide receiver. Yeah. It's really the same. I don't feel the need to discuss this. You have these players that are showing out in training camp right now, but you think they have any chance? I mean, Dave, what do you want to say? You look like you've already said.
I mean, I want to let Bryan talk first if he wants to say something.
Do you want to talk about, Bryan, the wide receivers at all?
I will briefly. The only thing that I can say about the wide receivers, I agree with same, but you have that jump from year one to year two with Chase Claypool that should be an upgrade. Mm-hmm. You have a man with a chip on his shoulder because of the way the 2020 season transpired for him in Deontay Johnson. And you have a guy in Juju Smith-Schuster that I think is playing for a contract. Yeah. So I would actually think that this is a situation when you throw in the other guys too, where you have James Washington actually playing for a contract, and you have Ray McLeod looking to stick. So I think the arrow points up just tiny bit for 2021 because of the jumps and the fact that these guys are all looking to stick and stay.
Right. It's good. There's good points. Good
very
points.
Similar to what I was going to say. I was actually going to say advantage 2021 because of the age of these guys, because they should be on the rise of their career, not either on the plateau or on the downside. That's the only reason I would say if you had the exact same people, but it's at that point where is another year older a good thing or a bad thing? You know what I'm saying? Right now for them, another year older is a good thing. So that's why I say, like Bryan says, ever slight advantage to 2021.
And even Juju Smith-Schuster, who is still one of the younger receivers in that room, and compared to, I think Deontay Johnson is biologically older than him, and he's just only played, I think he's younger in the league, but still. Yeah. Okay, so wide receivers will go with 2021. Let's go. This is a unique position. Again, similar to running back, but we're going to go tight end. So Vance McDonald gone. Eric Ebron returns. Pat Freiermuth. Gentry got hurt last season. Didn't see hardly anything from him. You can talk about Kevin Rader. But guys, obviously Pat Freiermuth being the second round draft pick. Bryan, what do you think about the tight ends in 2020 or 2021?
It's got to be 2021 here. And I hate to, be Mr. too optimistic, but I have to be. Freiermuth, they love this guy in camp. Some of the things that we've been hearing about him, they're going to be using him as an offensive weapon. You have Ebron, who has been, he went to tight end university, and he actually wants to go ahead and become a better blocker. A lot of people talk about his drops last year. He tallied 7 drops. 2 weeks were the majority of that. 2 weeks in a row where he had a bad little stretch there. But as far as I'm concerned, I think this team with Alfredo Roberts, I think Alfredo Roberts brings, just like Adrian Clem does, and we'll talk about him later, but Alfredo Roberts brings a lot of excitement to that tight end position and a lot of enthusiasm and toughness as well. So I really think that they're looking up too.
All right, Dave, what do you think about the tight ends?
Yeah, I'd be really tempted to call it even, but if I had to pick one, I would say 2021, mainly because I'm not looking at everything in the live chat, but did say something in the live chat that for Freiermuth, he's got all the P's, not just that he's Pat, but that he's got the what was it, the potential and the pedigree. Now we are talking about potential. That's the thing. So it's funny, because that's how a lot of times the difference between if this roster is better or not with a lot of people is going to be, are you going to think that these players, are you going to look at what they can do, or are you going to look at what they can't do? And if we're looking at our rookies, especially at that point of what they can do, then that's why I would say tight end's really close, but I would just say all things considered, and it's not that Coach Daniel was or Daniels, sorry if I didn't say it right, that retired wasn't doing a good job, but sometimes just having a new coach coming in just be a little bit different, maybe a little bit spark, not necessarily even a better coach can really add to something there. So when you consider all those things, I would just go slight advantage 2021, all things considered.
In 2020, Vance McDonald seemed very disinterested to me. He seemed very to kind of like, just why am I here? It seemed like he didn't want to.
He wanted to retire last year.
Yeah, and he got kind of talked into playing, and so it definitely came off that way to me. So I feel like if Eric Ebron can just be and I can't stress this enough. I was reading about Zach Gentry having a pretty good camp so far, and if he's such a big body guy, if he can block, and you could use Eric Ebron almost just in the slot as a mismatch. Maybe that's your best course if you keep 3 tight ends and you use Eric Ebron more as a receiver. It could happen. They could have options. I'm not sure if Gentry's that guy. We didn't see Gentry in 2020. So I think, and they say 2021, Gentry has kind of transformed his body a little bit. He's in better shape, better condition. If Freiermuth can contribute early, Ebron can do what he can do best, and that's not asking him to block a ton. I like the tight ends in 2021. And this is pretty crazy so far, but we're going to get into 2 positions that are going to be interesting. Well, let's go to quarterback. Now, obviously, Roethlisberger is back. We know this, but there's a little shakeup in the depth. Last season, it was Mason Rudolph, Joshua Dobbs, Paxton Lynch. Wasn't he in camp? Was that last year or 2 years ago?
He was in camp
last year, yeah.
But he didn't make the practice squad.
Correct. This year, Dwayne Haskins enters the chat, and he's been talked about a lot so far in training camp as he's getting a lot of reps. I feel like he's getting reps over Joshua Dobbs, but Bryan, we'll go with you first. Quarterback, 2020 or 2021?
So it's still almost the same to me, just with the fact that I know you're bringing Haskins in and there has been some change, but if I do have to go ahead and give you an answer, I would say slightly 2021. And the reason I'm going to say that is because they're not dealing with the Randy Fichtner factor. They are dealing with a new quarterbacks coach and Mike Sullivan, who just like Dave said earlier about Alfredo Roberts and having a new coach in there, that change kind of fires some guys up. And this guy is he's one that keeps his players accountable, but he's also a good players coach, and he's a nurturing type of coach. So I'm kind of excited for that. Love to see what Ben's going to do with the Matt Canada offense. Ben, looks ready, and they brought him back for a reason. And if they didn't think there was a reason to bring him back, they wouldn't have brought him back. So slightly 2021.
All right, Dave, what do you think?
I'm going to, oh my goodness. I think I'm going to have to say what some people were saying in the live chat. I'm going to go push. And the reason that I say this is, first of all, I don't care about the depth. I really don't. Do you know why? We're talking about QB3. Okay. What's the actual realistic chance? I know I don't want to say it because it happened in 2019, that's going to be what the Steelers are laying their hopes on this season, is the guy who's the 3rd on the depth chart. So this all comes down to Ben Roethlisberger. And the reason that I say push is he's got one thing in his favor and one thing against his favor. And the one thing going against him is that when you reach this point in your career, 1 year older is a bad thing. Okay. But the one thing he has in his favor is he's not coming off the injury where he's rehabbing, where he had to throw the ball a ton in order to come back. I don't know which one of those would weigh more, but to me, it's BTR versus BTR. So therefore I'm not even worried. It's not that I'm not worried about the depth. I'm just saying that isn't the big determining factor for me. It really comes down to Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger.
I agree with Dave that it is BTR versus BTR, but I will take 2021 BTR over 2020 BTR based on the fact that I can't stress enough. And this is someone that's helped people rehab from surgeries like what he had and shoulder surgeries. It's typically like 2 years until you start feeling like yourself again. And it's been about that time frame. He actually had an off season where he could rest. He wasn't able to rest his arm last season. I can't stress how big that is. I'm going to take 2021. Let's go to offensive line. This is a dicey one. Talk about two completely different position groups compared to from just 2 years apart. And no big Alejandro Villanueva. You have Matt Filer's gone. Marquise Pouncey retired. David DeCastro's released. And then you have Chuks Okorafor moving to left tackle. Zach Banner at
and we are back.
Yes, we are. Oh my gosh. Trey Turner. You don't know who the center is. We assume it's Kendrick Green. I feel like he's the starter unless he completely F's it up. And then you have at left guard is Dotson. We assume he hasn't even practiced yet at training camp. He's still working things out. I'm not sure what that injury is. But guys, 2020 or 2021, what do you think? Bryan, we'll start with you.
So do you remember last year at this time when we were talking about if you see Kevin Dotson play at all in 2020, it's probably going to be because somebody's really bad or somebody's really hurt. And at the end of the season,
we saw him in week 2.
Yeah. Saw him in week 2.
He started week 2.
And now he's the bedrock of that offensive line. He's the guy he is the one constant that they have just after one season. So it's got to be 2020. You really have to say 2020 because I know those guys were getting older. I know it was the end of really signaled the end of their career. But the reason that DeCastro's gone is because DeCastro was hurt. That's why he was cut. He wasn't going. That's why he was released. He wasn't going to be able to play much of this season anyways. But what you had known factors. As much as you don't like the way that offensive line played, you had Alejandro Villanueva, Marquise Pouncey, and you had David DeCastro. None of them are there. They were constants. Now you're dealing with hopes, dreams, and question marks. And we're hoping it comes out. In my head, I'm thinking it can work out fine. But right now, if I'm being realistic, 2020 was a better offensive line.
Okay. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with what I don't want to have to say. And that was 2020 was the better offensive line. And it wasn't good. And I'm not saying that means this year's offensive line won't be good, but you have to go with what's going on right at the moment. And that is the guys that we're expecting to start and do things. Only 2 of them are practicing. I mean, Chuks didn't practice yesterday when they had the pads on. Banner didn't practice with the pads on. Dodson didn't practice with the pads on. If these are the guys that the Steelers believed that they didn't have to bring back the other guys, they didn't have to re-sign the Big Al, they didn't have to re-sign Filer. If those are the guys, I mean, to me, the Turner for DeCastro was based on the injury. That's just what it is. And we didn't know what we were going to get injury-wise from DeCastro this year, and we're kind of in the same boat with Turner. But the reason I've got to go 2020 right now is because not only do we not know what we have with these guys, a week into practices, you still don't. You really don't. And it could be that they're not, and I'm not saying it's, red flag, danger, Will Robinson. I'm saying that it might be that the Steelers know there's no reason to rush these guys quite yet because we're not playing them in the Hall of Fame game anyway. So if they're a little bit dinged up and, Banner's coming back from injury, I don't know what the deal is with Chuks. Dotson, they said, was a guy that was day-to-day the very first practice. If these are the things, then that's okay. But if we could ask this exact same question on September 1st, and it could be completely different. But we have to go. We just don't have the data on them to say definitively that that it would be better this coming year. But we do know that because they're, for the most part, they're younger guys and everything else, that they have the potential to grow into that, even if it's by the time the season starts or during the season. We just have to see if it happens.
Now, 2020 is the more proven offensive line. I'm not sure they are the better offensive line. And that's where I'm going to go with this. And that's why I'm going to say 2021. You give me a full-time Kevin Dotson, and I'll take them over Matt Filer any day of the week. Give me a young, hungry Kendrick Green. And maybe, he might have some miscues.
You mean Quadric Green?
Yeah, Quadric. That's a Kyle, yeah. Okay, so the thing is, give me Kendrick Green. And everyone's like, well, he probably will have some mishaps. Guess who else did? Marquise Pouncey last season. Marquise Pouncey didn't play great, and he was hurt. He was banged up, missed a couple weeks. We all know the J.C. Hassenauer stretch of the last season was not pretty. We'll put it that way. Dave's talked about that on his Stat Geek podcast. And so I'm going to take the 2021, even though they're unproven. I would say, by the way, do not stress about injuries or anything like that until after the Hall of Fame game. Yes. Once the Hall of Fame game is done, if you see players not being inserted into practice, then you start to say, okay, what's going on? But I think literally right now they are saying this is essentially rookie undrafted.
And we're back.
Go ahead, Dave. That's a perfect segue, Dave. Yeah. Come on.
No, what I was going to say is I wanted you to be able to finish up what you want to say about the line, but I was going to say before we break, just really quick, big changeover in coaches on offense. We don't know what to do, but how much of a factor do you think that goes into these things?
Yeah. Canada and Clem.
Yeah, I would go if I had to choose that. I'm going 2021. I've got hope in what those guys can do. And I like that the Steelers realized they needed to make changes, and they did.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so that's the offense. I think predominantly we all took the 2021 offensive roster over the 2020 roster so far. So we're going to take a quick break. For those that are watching live on Facebook or on YouTube, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere. For those of you that are on the audio side, head over to part 2 where you hear us talk about the defense, trivia, and all that good fun stuff. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Nice, Dave. Welcome back to the
part 2. That was Bryan.
It was my chair.
Oh my gosh. Welcome back to part 2 of the Steelers preview. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. And with the loud squeaky chairs, our podcast producer, Bryan Anthony Davis, and the editor, Dave Schofield over there. Hey, before we get started, I want to remind everyone, make sure you follow us on our podcast platform. If you follow us on YouTube or on Facebook, that's great, but you're missing a lot of content. You're missing my Let's Ride podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Dave's Stat Geek on Thursday, the live mic on Tuesday. These new shows that we're debuting, like Matty Peveril's War Room has been going on for months now, but it's a part of our noon lineup now. The Steelers Fantasy Fix with Jeremy Betts is Wednesdays at noon. He aired his first episode this week. It was great. I loved it. I thought it was tremendous talking about quarterbacks. And we have more stuff coming. The Ohioans are coming up with a Steelers Power Half Hour. Bryan,
Saturday.
What else? That's Saturday, right? Yeah, that's Saturday.
Yes.
And
I just received it. It's just
awesome.
I'm getting ready to listen to it.
Fantastic. I hope I can't wait to listen to myself. But this is also things like the training camp recap podcast that I do every single time the Steelers have training camp. I give a whole recap of what happened that day and what we know from the general public. So if you don't follow us on a podcast platform, you're missing all of this stuff. You're literally only getting like the one show that's on YouTube or Facebook. So, Dave, Bryan, do you want to add anything to that while we're talking about podcasts?
Yeah, Jeffrey Benedict's new show is going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're also going to have What Ian's Talking About, which is all about social media and the Steelers. That's going to be a really fun and exciting show. But stuff returning that you might have forgotten about. The Steelers pregame show. Here we go with KT Smith and myself. That's going to be coming up on the weekends before the games. So that's a really fun pregame show. And if you have not had a chance, I know you get to read his stuff, but if you haven't had a chance to listen to KT Smith or Cliff Harris is Still a Punk, if you haven't had a chance to listen to him, then you're missing out, because this guy is an award-winning champion high school football coach. And he knows the ins and outs of the game. He played college football. This guy is fantastic to listen to. I kind of just throw questions at him and throw stuff out and let him run on that show, and it's great. And we do that before every game. We're going to come back with the rooting guide is coming back. We're going to have so many things to go ahead and put out there. I can't wait. There's going to be 25 original shows. And when I say 25, that doesn't count part 1 or part 2. There's going to be 25 original shows every single week. That's a lot of content, and it is all different.
And that's wherever you get your podcasts. All you have to do is search Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain, subscribe, follow, and you'll get all of it. Period. So that's good stuff. All right, let's get started. Let's get back to the topic at hand, and that is the comparing the 2020 rosters to the 2021 rosters. We're going to talk about the defensive line. This was that position I said same. It's the same, basically. But Bryan, if you had to pick 2020, 2021, what are you doing?
I'm still saying the same. If I have to pick between the two?
Well, I was going to say the same with the wide receivers, and then you all kind of said, well, there's another year, and then you kind of talked it out of it. So I didn't know if that was the same thing with the defensive side or not.
Okay, then I'm going to tick everybody off and say 2020. And the reason I'm going to say that is everybody's a year older.
Okay.
That was going to be my thing that I was going to say. If the wide receivers, I say 2021 is better because they're younger guys and it's another year, to get better, then the defensive line would have to be the inverse of that. But I mean, tomato.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's still good.
You have your great guys coming back. I mean, honestly, I'm going to change my answer. I'm going 2021. And here's why. Because the Steelers lost Tyson Alualu, and by some amazing and miraculous situation, they got him back. And you can't not take that into consideration because he was gone and now he's back. He is the prodigal son. He returns without even missing a game. It's great.
Yeah, and I think you think maybe what if Stephon Tuitt kind of broke out last season? What if that's going to be the new norm for him? And he had double-digit sacks. I think, what do you have, 11.5 last season, or was it 10.5?
Yes.
It was yes.
It was 11.5.
I think it was 11.5. I know he had double digits. I just didn't know it was 11 or 10. So the defensive line returns, and they're going to be good again, no doubt about that. Let's go to inside linebacker. Last season, you had Vince Williams, you had Robert Spillane, you had Devin Bush briefly. Ulysses Gilbert III was not there very long. I don't know, guys. And then this year, Vince Williams retires right before the training camp begins. Marcus Allen is labeled as a linebacker. Jerry Olszewski talked about him today on Thursday and saying that he thinks he's on the right track to see more playing time. So, guys, this is a tough one. Bryan, what do you think? Inside linebacker, 2020 or 2021?
I'm going to say 2021. And here's the reason for that. Robert Spillane, I think, is on a mission. I think he's, I'm going to miss Vince Williams. I'm going to miss Vinny Vici a lot. But I really think that this guy's a guy like LJ Fort became, not with the Steelers, but elsewhere. But I really think there's even more of an upside to a guy like Robert Spillane. I think he could be a starter there for a while. So I really like that. I think Bush is back. And remember, when you're talking about the inside linebackers, you're only talking about 5 games of Mr. Bush. So yeah, you got to say a little bit better. The depth behind them they're getting stronger. They're getting better too.
Okay, Dave, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I have to say this. You caught me off guard. You were saying 10.5 or 11.5 sacks. And the reason I said yes is because I thought it was 11 halfway in between. And I just looked it up and that's correct. It was 11. So you were right. You said 10.5 to 11.5. You were spot on.
So he had 11 even.
He had 11 even.
I could have sworn it was a half. Okay.
Yeah. So no, the half came into play. Actually, I don't have anyone listed that has a half a sack. So maybe it is. I don't know. Pro Football Reference doesn't have anybody with a half. Oh, well. Now you're making me second guess it. When it comes to the inside linebackers, the biggest issue is we're thinking of 2020 of Devin Bush with 5 games, and we're assuming that we're going to have Devin Bush for the entire season this year. And I am A-okay with that assumption. And that right there is the biggest difference of anything. The fact that Devin Bush missed all those games last year and gave Robert Spillane a chance to show what he could do and have to step in and be it. That's what gives me an advantage for 2021, not super excited about the depth now that there's no Vince Williams. I can't say that that's not at least a little bit of a concern. But the other concern is Devin Bush and Robert Spillane weren't on the field together in 2020. It was like 8 total snaps in like week 1 where they were both on the field together. They just weren't playing together. So that's what's going to happen this year. So it's a bit of a mystery, but I'm still going to say just, the return of Devin Bush is so much more important. And that's why it's 2021.
I agree. And I honestly didn't think that Devin Bush's impact was that great until I started to read some of the work by Jeffrey Benedict and Kevin Smith that Bryan brought up earlier in this podcast. And you see that, boy, does he make a difference. Boy, does he make. So I think just him being there by himself, if they could sign someone like Avery Williamson, and I know that people are like, oh, why would you bring back Avery Williamson? Because I think Avery Williamson was Vince Williams 2.0 last season. If you have him alongside Devin Bush, I think it would make their inside linebacker depth great. You wouldn't have to rely on Robert Spillane every single down I think it would make their inside linebacker depth really, really good. And he knows the system. He was there last season. Mm-hmm. So I think they could still improve that, but I'll still take 2021 because of healthy Devin Bush.
And you got Buddy.
2020.
I want to see what Buddy Johnson can do.
Yeah, for sure.
And we're back because with Buddy Johnson, honestly, it could be that inside linebacker is one of those positions that the Steelers might be that they could bring in someone else, but they're kind of waiting because they really want to see what Marcus Allen and Buddy Johnson are going to offer. And if UG3 can stay healthy.
Let's also not forget that Melvin Ingram III, they have had him rushing from the inside as well. Not saying he's going to be an inside linebacker, but keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to outside linebacker. Last year in 2020, obviously, Bud Dupree's there. Alex Highsmith is a rookie. TJ Watt, that's essentially your top 3. This season, Bud Dupree is gone. He's with Tennessee via free agency. And then you have Alex Highsmith going into year 2. You have TJ Watt, Cassius Marsh, Quincy Roche, Q from the U, and our 6th round pick. But then you sign Melvin Ingram III, and suddenly things start to have a little bit more of a glow to them. So, Bryan, 2020 or 2021, what are you doing at outside linebacker?
So close to going to 2020, but when you look at some of the additions like Melvin Ingram III and Q from the U, but you throw in the leap, and what everybody's talking about is the difference between year 1 and year 2 in Alex Highsmith. Throw that in with the given that is TJ Watt. I'm looking at the arrow in 2021. Losing Bud Dupree is huge. I know that, but without bringing those guys in, Ingram kind of pushes it back to 2021 for me.
Okay, Dave, what do you think?
I don't want to sound too homer and go 2021 with everything, because you can't say that the loss of Bud Dupree was not huge. The biggest thing, and this is what I'm still trying to figure out, is that Alex Highsmith is not Bud Dupree, and Bud Dupree is not Alex Highsmith. They're not the same player. I've said this many times. They're not the same. And I think the biggest thing isn't going to be, does Highsmith can he do what Dupree did? Or what would have been vice versa. It's all about how the Steelers are going to utilize the players that they have. And you can't say that Melvin Ingram III doesn't also come in there. When you take a guy that has shown that he has done it so much for, I can't even remember where I saw someone trying to say that him and the loss of Ola Adeniyi was a wash because they both had the same number of sacks last year. I'm like, come on, you're going to say that about former Pro Bowler Melvin Ingram III? No, that is definitely so much better than what you had just with that pedigree. Like, you can't argue that, like, if you last year, even with Highsmith being the rookie and doing as well as he did, that Melvin Ingram III wouldn't have been an upgrade then, just because of who he is and what he brings to the table, even if it's just going to be that 3-man rotation. So I'm going to say I'm going to go with 2020, just simply because you can't. It'd almost be disrespectful to Dupree. Not that the Steelers didn't have a plan, not that they're not better off financially, if you want to talk about that and the whole salary cap thing. They're much better off than if they would have had to pay Dupree. But at the same time, I do want to appreciate what Dupree did for the Steelers when he was here.
Now, Dave, you said earlier that you're like, this is not about depth, and I agree. But this is the one position where I would think
this one it is about.
This
depth.
one you have to think it's at least a 3. Yeah. So T.J. Watt last year, Bud Dupree last year, Alex Highsmith as a rookie. Highsmith was good as a rookie. I think Highsmith is the one that's going to flip this for me to 2021. Melvin Ingram, of course, it's all about health. We don't need to say that. That's obvious. But T.J. Watt's going to be great. Barring injury, he's going to be great. I think Alex Highsmith is going to be great in year 2. And I think Melvin Ingram should be able to provide something to the point where I think he's the one. Take a Melvin Ingram with his veteran experience. It's light years above where Alex Highsmith was last year. And so I think that Highsmith could I think he's honestly, in terms of like coverage, he's just as good as Bud Dupree. I think he's a better technician from rushing the passer. Dupree definitely found his niche in that defense, but I'm going to take 2021 because, like Bryan said, Melvin Ingram was the one that kind of put him over the top. Good, Bryan, you want to say something?
Yeah, and gentlemen, let me just throw in Quincy Roche as well, because he's more than a 6th round pick. And so when you throw him into the mix, he makes them so much better too, because he's going to do more than what Ola Adeniyi did.
Yeah. Yeah, which is not much last year. Let's go to cornerback. So cornerback is obviously Steven Nelson was there last year. Cam Sutton, Mike Hilton, Joe Hayden. Those were your primary cornerbacks. We know that James Pierre came on late. We know Justin Lane never did. And so, sorry, I had to throw that in there.
And we're back.
Justin Lane turned my power out. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's got a pause button for you there, Jeff.
Yeah, Lust and Jane. So now this season, not so much proven, but you think about Cam Sutton gets re-signed. Mike Hilton's gone via free agency. Steven Nelson is released for cap reasons. And now you have Joe Hayden, Cam Sutton, James Pierre, Arthur Millette is there. Arthur Brooks. And what is his first name?
Antoine
Brooks, Bob Brainfart. Antoine Brooks Jr. He's the one that is being given the first shot at that nickel spot that Mike Hilton used to be deployed with. So, guys, this is a tough one for me. Bryan, which way are you going, 2020 or 2021?
2020. I have to do it just the same way I spoke about the offensive line. It's not, I believe in the offensive line in 2021. I really do. I believe in these corners. I think the whole thing hinges on James Pierre, but I'm not ready to crown him yet. We've never seen James Pierre in a preseason game. Remember that. He's never played an NFL preseason game. We're getting great reports from him. We have seen him in limited NFL action. I like the little things that I've seen from him. So I really think that James Pierre is going to be good. Steven Nelson was Nelson Island. He was good. He took the onus off of Joe Hayden a little bit, and Hayden's just getting up there in years. So if I'm looking at this, I see the possibility that this can be a really good group. And I know the coaches and the front office know so much more than I do by being able to let Steven Nelson go, because they have trust in Cameron Sutton bringing him back. They have trust in, I really like what I see in Arthur Millette too, but you had a dynamic player in Mike Hilton that's gone as well. So I'm still going to say 2020 right now is the better unit because of the question marks here, but there's no doubt in my mind that they could become one. But when you're saying looking at August, late July 2021, I've got to say 2020 is better. They're going to prove me wrong probably, but that's where I've got to go right now.
All right, Dave, what do you think?
I'm going to go 2020 right now based on the data that we have, because we don't really know. But I'll tell you, everyone who's super concerned about these corners, and I've said it over and over again with the young corners the Steelers have and who's going to play where and everything else, is that the Steelers made the moves that they did. And I mean, you realize that the Steelers have, even above the money that they need to go into the season right now on the salary cap, they have the money that they would have had to keep someone like a Mike Hilton. You know, they chose the money for Cam Sutton over Mike Hilton. They chose to let Steven Nelson go. They made these decisions based on the other players that they had. So they believe in them on what from the data that they have, and we just don't have as much data as they do. So therefore, I'm saying 2020 based on our information, but I don't know that the Steelers would answer it the same way, because I think they really believe in the players that they have, and really what we think isn't nearly as important as what they think.
Right. Yep. I'm going to go with 2020 here, but like Bryan said, come August, I might be thinking differently. Mm-hmm. And I think about what Terrell Austin said to Steelers.com at training camp about how if James Pierre is a player that can prove that he's a starter, that means that Cam Sutton could be going right back to the inside, in which case he can thrive in that role. He can play Mike Hilton's spot. He can play his dime spot. He can do really anything in the defensive back half of the second. He can play safety too. So he's so versatile. I think that it all just depends. It's like a wait and see thing. It's a wait and see thing. All right, let's go to safety. Bryan, let's talk about safeties. Minka and Edmonds are back. And then we talk about depth. What do you think, 2020 or 2021?
Definitely 2021. You throw in the fact that you did not tender a 5th-year option. You did not give him your 5th-year option, and I'm talking about Terrell Edmonds here. I thought he had a really good 2020 season. I thought it was so much better than what we've seen from him. I still contend, and I say this every time I bring up this guy's name, that if he was a 2nd or 3rd round pick, we would love him. He'd be one of your favorite players, but he was a 1st round pick, and people take that into consideration. I think he complements Minka Fitzpatrick well. Minka Fitzpatrick is just right now, he seems like he's on a path to Canton, and we've seen this in the past. You had the complement to Troy Polamalu, who's a Hall of Famer, who's in Canton, and his name was Ryan Clark. You've got a complement right now to Minka Fitzpatrick, and his name's Terrell Edmonds. He got his hand on a football last year, which was really nice to see him get an interception. But I really think that this guy does a lot of the little dirty things that we need that player to do. We need those. You're not going to have 11 superstars on defense, but you have the guys that do the dirty work, and that's who Terrell Edmonds is. And he's playing for a contract this year, which he wasn't last year. And I know some people say they should always be playing for a contract. They should play every year like it's their walk year. I know, but I just really think that there's so much more fire to Terrell Edmonds, and we're definitely going to see it. This is a better unit.
Okay, Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, your starters are the same. Your backups are not at all. I feel like the Steelers really like Trey Norwood. He's got an interception today, apparently. There was Coach Sean was asking questions about him. So that's part of it that they like. I would almost put them even, but I'm going to go back for the same reason as the receivers. When you're 2 starters and safety's a position that those guys can play 100% of the snaps. That's just one of those things, like offensive line and quarterback. So I'm going to say 2021 because these are young guys with another year experience playing together.
I agree with what Dave said. Yeah, we'll go with just one more year. There's really not much change when we talk about starters. So let's go with now overall roster real quick. We don't have to go into in-depth analysis here. Think about what you said. Think about how you answered the questions by position. Would you say it's 2020 roster or 2021 roster overall is better? Bryan, go.
Based on my answers, 2021's better.
Dave?
This is what makes it interesting. I'm going to say that, like Bryan said, based on the answers, but we're also moving forward in 2021, assuming that we're going to have everyone all season, and looking at 2020 when we didn't have Bush and we didn't have Dupree for part of the season and other things that were going on there. So, and honestly, I think the ultimate question for the ultimate answer for this question is really going to come down to the offensive line. So for now, I'm going to say 2021 because right now more players are healthy than they were in 2020.
Yeah, on paper, I'm going to say 2021. You talk about guys like Melvin Ingram and things like that. I'm going to say 2021. Injuries can derail any season for any team, for sure. Now, we did have a super chat. It was a long time ago. It was $5. You have it still. Fantastic.
I got it.
By John Knox. He gave us $5. He says, who's in the Steelers Hall of Honor in 2021? I predict John Kolb and Larry Brown. like when it comes to this, I want y'all to know, like, I saved it, and there are people like, "Oh, you didn't recognize the live chat or super chat." We did, but we were in the middle of talking about it. So, Bryan, this is right up your alley. Same with you, Dave. Who do you think gets in this season? Bryan, go ahead.
John Kolb and Larry Brown are absolutely great picks. They definitely deserve to be in. They do not get as much. They could actually be Hall of Famers in my mind. That's how good they were for that team. They were so important for that team. Larry Brown is a lot of people don't realize he was the first offensive touchdown. He was the first offensive points for the Steelers in a Super Bowl as a tight end in Super Bowl IX. John Kolb was, he was the left tackle, the Oklahoma State Cowboy. He was just the man that protected Terry Bradshaw. They were so integral to that team. I would love to see those guys in. If I'm looking at anybody else, I'm not sure with some of the later guys, but there's going to be a later pick in there too. Someone from the last 10 years or so, and I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if he's in or not. James Ferrier, whether he's in or not, if he's already in, I apologize, but if not, James Ferrier would probably be my pick. And a guy like Ike Taylor, I would consider as well.
Okay, Dave, what about you?
Yeah, my biggest thing is I can't remember who's already in. That's the biggest thing, because I think the Hall of Honor is a great place for members of the Steelers that should be getting Hall of Fame consideration that aren't in there, if you know what I mean. And that's why I like the two players that were already listed. And then of course, any newer guy that we kind of put up there that we want to ask, is someone like a Casey Hampton in the Hall of Honor yet? I would love to see somebody like that, but I can't remember who's there. I have the list, recall. Dave. Okay, I do recall that it's going to be Saturday that they announce it. That it's part of the stuff going on with Steelers Fest, that they're going to announce the Hall of Honor people for 2021.
James Ferrier is in. He got it in 2018. As far as Kolb, he's not in, and neither is Larry Brown. So I think they would.
Was Casey Hampton in?
Casey Hampton is not in.
I think he should be.
So I agree with you 100%. I would go with Casey Hampton over Ike Taylor. I think Ike Taylor's a guy that you have to look at. And
I'm gonna go with James Harrison. Is he in?
No, he is not in.
I'm gonna say that Debo gets in.
And there's one more to consider. And if you're looking at a later guy, it's Heath.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Good question. Let's go with Dave for some trivia to finish out the show. Go ahead, Dave.
All right. So something very interesting I was looking at today. I was looking at Steelers players that have made Pro Bowl, Steelers players that have made All-Pro, and of course, Steelers players that were in the Hall of Fame, which is funny that, of course, I don't have Hall of Honor with all this. I was looking specifically at the offensive side of the ball. There are two positions. Now I broke them down more than what we did. Like the offensive line, I did center, guard, and tackle. I did tight end, wide receiver, running back, quarterback. That's all of them, right? I think so. There are two positions where the Steelers have never had an All-Pro on offense. Do you know what they are?
Never, as in their entire existence.
In their entire existence, they've never had a first-team All-Pro.
I'm going to say left tackle.
You don't even have to say left.
Okay, tackle.
Tackle is correct.
Yay.
They have not had an All-Pro tackle. Now, Alan Faneca played tackle and has been an All-Pro, but he was not an All-Pro the year that he played tackle.
Okay.
And he would have been an All-Pro guard probably if he would have been there. Okay.
I have got two. I'm going to go with the one that I think is more obvious, and then the one's out of left field. Tight end.
And it's tight end. The Steelers have never had an All-Pro tight end, and they've never had an All-Pro tackle.
How about that, Bryan? We got it. First guesses. Look at that.
Now, what position do you think on offense do you think the Steelers have had the most All-Pros?
Running back. Oh, no. I changed it. Can I change it? Center. I'm going to go center.
I was going to say center, so let me throw in linebacker.
That's not on offense.
I was going to say it's all offense.
This is offense. See, and the problem is with including linebacker on the defense is when there are 3-4 versus 4-3. You know, an outside linebacker in a 4-3 is really more like an inside linebacker in a 3-4. Anyway, so that's why they all get lumped together. But you are correct. It's center. The Steelers have had 6 All-Pro centers in Mike Webster, Dermontti Dawson, Marquise Pouncey, Jeff Hardings, Mike Barzak, Barzak. What am I saying? And Bill Walsh. It was from the 30s. How am I supposed to get his name right?
Oh gosh,
could have been Dave.
You're making my Barzak hurt right now.
Yeah.
All right, let's do some final thoughts here. Bryan, go ahead. And Bryan, explain the schedule next week for those listeners out there. It's going to be a little different.
All right, so we are going to have the Steelers preview coming up next Tuesday evening. So what happens at the Scobro show? That is going to be moved to Sunday night. So when you're enjoying your day off on Sunday, when you're dreading the fact that you've got to go back to work on Monday, you could take solace with you've got the awesomeness of the Scobros, and you might even get some wisdom on the live chat from one hashtag Pay Kyle. So with that being said,
paying Kyle anything.
Yeah. Kyle's getting nothing. Kyle got a shirt, so that's fine.
Those are great shirts.
Even mentioned Kyle. Yeah. All Kyle. Yeah, Kyle wanted a shirt. That's what Kyle was all about. He wanted a shirt.
So that's going to be happening. Then everything else is going to be the same. What's going to happen on Thursday night? We are 7 days away from football.
That's crazy.
So there's going to be no preview because the preview is going to be on Tuesday night. What are you going to do? You're not going to have Dave Schofield. You're not going to have Jeff Hartman. You're not going to have Bryan Anthony Davis. Not so fast, my friend. You're going to have them after the game because it's the return of the post-game show.
Who wants to talk about undrafted rookies? We do.
Dude, I can't wait. I'm so excited.
I'm so pumped. So no, that's what we're gonna have going on, and everything on the audio side is going to stay the same.
And there you have it. Dave, anything?
Yeah, it's funny because some people were really upset. They're like, how is Heath Miller not an All-Pro? Okay. Honestly, I was looking that up today, and the whole reason I came across this was because I was curious about it because of an article that Michael Beck wrote, and it was about Freiermuth. Could he be a tight end? He's like, and some people didn't like that. Michael said, even when Heath Miller was here, he did not get the respect around the league that put him in the upper echelon of tight ends. Heath Miller had 2 Pro Bowls. He had it in 2009 and in 2012. And if you go back and look from the years 2009 to 2012 and look at all the tight ends that played in the league at that time, Heath Miller was ranked 9th. Okay. It's just how it was. But we know as Steelers fans what he did for this organization. And that's really what it comes down to. My final thoughts after I had to clean that up real quick is I just want to talk next week. I want to preview a game. I can't wait to preview a game. Let's preview a game. And you're like, oh, it's just a Hall of Fame game. We're talking about these guys that are going to be the depth and the difference between this roster being better and not better. And we're going to get to watch them. We're going to get to see these we're going to say, oh, can Buddy Johnson play inside linebacker? Guess who you're going to see in the Hall of Fame game? Buddy Johnson. Oh, can Kendrick Green really be that next man up at center for the Steelers? Guess who you're going to see in the Hall of Fame game? Kendrick Green. Exactly. So you're not going to see TJ Watt. So you're not going to see Ben Roethlisberger. So you're not going to see some of these guys. We know what those guys can bring. I want to see the guys that we don't know what they can bring yet. And then that way we can see what they can do. I'm ready to preview it. I would preview it right now if you'd let me, but we better save something for Tuesday.
Who is this year's Two-Czar skipper? That's the question. Who is this year's Two-Czar skipper?
Amen.
All right. Bryan, anything? Or are you good?
I just have to answer this question with a no. Will Sapphire be there? No.
Bryan would know. So, okay.
He's got her on speed dial because she hasn't stole his phone yet.
She is not going to be on the post-game show. No, 7 days. I am so excited for it. Hey, we're getting preseason back, and you don't know what you got until it's gone. I missed preseason last year. I'm so excited. I just can't hide it. Let's go.
All right, Dave, why don't you send us out?
Hey.
All right, we'll see you Tuesday for another Steelers preview. Take it easy.